Polls show the race is still essentially tied in the battleground, so that matters. Want to bring in Ian Sams, senior spokesperson for the Harris-Walz campaign. Great to have you here today. Want to point out these Nate Silver forecasts, right? He has Trump, I guess this keeps going up. 60.1% is his probability rating of who will win the election. He puts Trump in that category for right now. What is going to happen before next Tuesday that Kamala Harris can do to help try to turn that around before the debate?
Well, I think that we're campaigning really hard and the vice president's sharing her message. I think in the last couple of days, you've seen a lot on the economy. You saw President Trump speaking at the New York Economic Club. You saw Vice President Harris speaking in New Hampshire. And a very different choice for the American people between President Trump, who wants to cut taxes for those at the very top and big corporations, and Vice President Harris, who has a plan to jumpstart small business growth. 25 million small businesses in her first term is her goal, by giving them the resources to get off the ground. This comes on top of her middle-class tax cut that she's running on and campaigning on for the country. And so in the coming days, I think you'll hear us talk a lot more about our economic vision. Just this morning, 88 top CEOs, former CEOs from across the country, business leaders, companies like Ford, Starbucks, Pepsi, Lyft, these are real American companies, came out and endorsed Vice President Harris, said she'd be great for the business community. Donald Trump's a former CEO himself. I'm not sure why the CEOs don't like him so much, but suddenly this morning they're coming on board because I think they see the difference in the economic vision.
I think that he might
who's
say,
going to actually grow the economy.
Sorry, so I'm not a spokesperson for him, but I imagine what they would say is that, well, he's never been a friend of Wall Street. He has never been a friend of the establishment. Of course, the CEOs don't like him.
And guys, before we get started, thank you so much for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing. Let's get started. Now, I want you guys to realize that Nate Silver is voting for Kamala Harris. And even he's saying that it's highly probable that Donald Trump wins it all. This is because he's doing it by the numbers. He has also openly admitted that Kamala Harris did not get a bump off the DNC. He also said that the VP has been declining in polls over the past couple of weeks, notably in swing states. Not a good sign for Kamala Harris. And this is especially not good news for the Harris campaign because that would effectively give Donald Trump the presidency. Now, what's really shocking here is that Nate is getting attacked on his X account for revealing these numbers. One post that best described the situation said that Democrats love Nate Silver when he says a Democrat is winning, and they hate Nate Silver when he says that a Democrat is losing. And if you look at the numbers here, guys, Donald Trump is said to be favored to win. 61.5% to 38.3%, giving the former president a commanding lead in the swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, and Nevada. But I gotta be honest with you guys, there are some things that are happening right now that I just can't share everywhere. And but I definitely want to get the information out to you guys. I want to get this information out to my true patriots and truth seekers. So what I did is I left the link for you guys down below. You can check it out. Just scroll down into the description down below, maybe even in a pinned comment. You'll see a link to my Patreon. Check out my Patreon. That way you can see what's really going on behind the scenes. I'm only making this available for a limited number of people, but if it's available when you click on the link, hopefully you can sign up. If not, well, like I said, limited time. And the reasoning that many point to is that because Harris has been hiding in her basement, she's been avoiding the media, and she continues to have aides discuss policy concerns with mainstream media without actually talking about them. And yet they're trying to tell us that she's been talking to us this entire time.
Do the American voters not need to hear from her directly? She wants to be the commander-in-chief. We paid attention to her, and you guys didn't like that either. So the interviews.
It's funny.
Go ahead. I'll give you the last one.
It's funny. I hear the question, and it's funny because it's like you're acting like she's in the witness protection program. She's been traveling across the battleground states, talking to thousands of people in packed arenas, arenas that are much more packed than what President Trump is speaking to.
And I think scripted interviews or scripted speeches are great. But it's different from doing an interview. And also, she hasn't had to explain why she has done the flip-flop on fracking, the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and now even banning plastic straws.
But Dana, you're Dana, not you, Dana,
yes,
but
I know Dana versus
Dana last week on CNN in a fulsome sit-down interview asked her questions about all those things. So I just think it's inaccurate to say she's not answering these questions. Okay. She sat down and did a long interview last week to explain her positions on these issues and how her views have developed, being the vice president to President Biden, how she's gotten so much done. When you talk about fracking, this is the vice president who cast the tie-breaking vote on the biggest piece of legislation to spur clean energy job growth in American history.
Yeah, that's which led to inflation, which is causing retirees to have to go back to work.
So an 18-minute interview is supposed to be long now? And who's believing that the CNN interview wasn't scripted? Now, as I remember, guys, Dana Bash completely, utterly failed to push on issues by not asking as many follow-up questions as she should have, especially since Harris and Walz, they were vague with their answers regarding specific topics like flip-flopping on policies.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
This has mainstream media admitting the worst is not over for Harris. Taking into account the poll numbers are still slightly close, we also can't forget that the polls don't do justice to show how strong Trump is during elections, meaning that a small lead over him on paper is really nothing.
A couple of things that I'm really surprised by. Number one, I was first surprised by how well Kamala did right off the bat. But what I'm surprised by is after the DNC, she has had no additional bump. Right. And the other thing I'm surprised by is if you look at where Biden was at this very same point in the race, he was ahead by 7 points in the race. Right now, Kamala is just ahead by 3. Hillary was ahead by 4. So she's not doing as well as any of those candidates did. And if you look at the details, if you look at how she was doing with Black voters, Latino voters, across the board there, she's not doing as well as her predecessors did. And that's not good news for her, especially because Donald Trump has a history of overperforming the polls. Whatever the polls say, he usually does between 1 and 3 points higher, and the general sometimes even more than that.
And that's exactly the point that I was making. They can claim victory on Harris as being popular, but it's not going to matter much if she loses the election. This in turn is causing mainstream media to slowly steer away from Harris. And we've seen it with CNN as they now openly criticize her for not facing the press as much as Donald Trump. They've also called her out for changing her stance on multiple different fronts, one of which is the border wall, a wall that she's called a vanity project before. However, new ads support that she's now in support of building a wall to keep out illegal immigrants. But of course, we're not completely sure as to where she stands because she's just going to keep hiding in her basement until it's time to face the nation. You already have the upper hand since Donald Trump's team has had to adjust to Kamala Harris. And she's been talking all this smack and saying that he's scared to debate her and all that, which means that they were surprised when he agreed to ABC News. Josh Dawsey posted on X regarding this dilemma about the debate. He said that the VP's camp is not accepting the rules from ABC News. Now, again, guys, the same rules that would have been in place if President Joe Biden was still in the race. Now, her account responded to this by saying that Donald Trump's advisors are not allowing him to debate with Kamala Harris if the mics are live. She further states that if his team doesn't have confidence in him, then the American people shouldn't as well. Now, guys, I think it's pretty easy to say that these are just excuses when you remember the fact that Donald he's pretty quick on his feet when it comes to arguments.
This is a tough business to run for president.
I know, you're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
real
principled.
tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see, I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so
Doesn't matter.
far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This doesn't do a thing to solve the problem.
One at a time.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Although Donald Trump, he can go off the handle a little bit with these debates. I'll give her that. And that's what Harris is hoping for. It's also likely that this is why she's pissed at ABC News, because they're not dropping to their knees and giving her everything she wants. Now, some of you guys may already be aware, but her demands to change the rules of the debate, they have already been rejected. Now, this could open up a path where Kamala Harris's team will pretty much just up and say, hey, we're not doing this debate because Donald Trump can't handle a hot mic. Now, I'm fairly certain Donald Trump doesn't care as much about this entire mic issue as much as Kamala Harris does, because they can just do the ABC News debate as they agree on another debate with mics turned on. It's literally just that simple. But not if you're planning to do only one debate. Now, as far as we're being told, Kamala Harris will not agree to any other debate dates other than this one. So it's pretty much all or nothing for her with ABC. And this is the reason as to why they're pushing for this narrative as hard as they are. There's no second debate, even though Donald Trump has agreed to doing multiple debates against the VP. And this hesitation from her is causing her poll numbers to slip. Polls are already showing that the race in the swing states is becoming closer and closer by the day. Some states are showing Donald Trump is already leading in the polls against Kamala Harris, which again, each day is becoming worse and worse for the vice president, specifically in Michigan, where she initially had a pretty good lead over Donald Trump. That lead is now gone, and they're now tied according to the margin of error. And note that these numbers are being reported by left-leaning news outlets, guys. This just proves that the debate is something that Harris has to do. She has to prove herself against Donald Trump, and she has to do it convincingly. If not, then, well, she's probably going to get some really bad news this November. They brought in the whole DOJ to try and get him. They weren't too interested in the former president's health and safety. Instead, he said that they were making it very difficult to have proper staffing in terms of Secret Service. I mean, the Secret Service has officially gone on record and acknowledged after the assassination attempt that it had denied some requests by Donald Trump's team for additional security. Then Dr. Phil asked the real question. He said, I'm not saying that they wanted you to get shot, but do you think it was okay with them if you did? And according to Donald Trump, he just doesn't know. What he does know is that there's a lot of hatred. He then listed his achievements as president and argued that when you do things like that, the other side that disagrees with that or for whatever reason doesn't want to do it, a lot of hatred is generated. That's when he argued that maybe that bullet is because of their rhetoric. Because according to Donald Trump, it's really nasty rhetoric. Because if they're not attacking Trump, they're busy copying his policies. Am I right, guys? Speaking of which, it looks like Kamala Harris needs to face the people for other reasons too. Now, guys, I did a previous video where I discussed and I uncovered an alleged hit and run by the vice president from a couple years ago. Make sure you guys watch that video out right after this one. Click on my channel, click on the video section, check that video out next, guys. And as always, I appreciate you guys. Actually, that was a live video. So click on my channel, click on the live tab, and then check out that video next. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing. See you next time.